got to talk about R. Kelly. We've been following this from the beginning. Also, by the way, just to note that Britney Spears' whole situation is beginning to come to an interesting, perhaps, conclusion. So we're going to be talking about that along with Theranos next week and see what's going on there. But on Monday, the jury finally came in and he was found guilty. Now, if you watched this podcast last week where we talked about Kelly, I don't think anyone observing this Kelly case and the defense could say that this guy had a real defense, had a real strong defense attorney. You know, the reporting is, well, I'm going to talk about this article here. This is an article that came out on Monday announcing the verdict. Play this and I'll talk about it some more. This is from the New York Times, Monday the 27th, and it's entitled, R. Kelly is convicted on all counts after decades of accusations of abuse, and it's by Troy Clausen. And it says in part, quote, the jury in New York deliberated for about 9 hours before convicting the singer of all 9 counts against him, including racketeering and 8 violations of an anti-sex trafficking law known as the Mann Act. The decision represents the first criminal punishment against Mr. Kelly despite a trail of allegations of misconduct that extends for more than a quarter century. Mr. Kelly, 54, once one of the biggest names in popular music, now faces the possibility of life in prison, capping a remarkable reversal of fortune. As the verdict was read, he sat motionless in the courtroom wearing a navy blue suit and glasses, with his facial expression hidden behind a mask. To many observers, Mr. Kelly's case represented a critical test of the inclusivity of the Me Too movement, which seeks to hold influential and powerful men accountable for sexual misbehavior. As he left the courtroom on Monday, one of Kelly's lawyers said his defense team would consider an appeal. Quote, of course, we're disappointed in the verdict, the lawyer Devereaux L. Canick said as he walked through the courthouse. I am even more disappointed in the prosecution for bringing this case, he said, adding that it was replete with inconsistencies. Kelly abuser and prosecution's first witness, Geronda Pace, wrote on Instagram, today my voice was heard. Oronike Odolei, the co-founder of the hashtag Mute R. Kelly campaign, said the conviction was the result of accusations that took years to be heard. Quote, this is the culmination of the movement of so many women who have been trying for so long to have their voices heard, Ms. Odolei said. We have never had ownership of our bodies, and we're at a moment where black women are no longer accepting that as the price of being black and female in America. Mr. Kelly also faces a federal trial in Chicago on child pornography and obstruction charges and additional state sex crime charges in Illinois and Minneapolis. Kim Fox, the top prosecutor in Chicago who announced state sex crime charges against Mr. Kelly in 2019, said the conviction was monumental for the Me Too movement and sent a significant message about whose stories mattered. Elizabeth Geddes, an U.S. attorney, told the panel that their decision would serve to hold the fallen superstar accountable for decades of pain and torment he inflicted. Quote, for many years, what happened in the defendant's world stayed in the defendant's world, Ms. Geddes said in her closing argument, but no longer. So it's a reckoning for R. Kelly. And one of the things that I thought this guy, his defense attorney's statement that he's more pissed at the prosecution for bringing the case was a very odd statement. And I mean, inconsistencies. If this was such a bad case by the prosecution, why didn't they win? I mean, to me, that just tells me that you're a terrible lawyer, that you couldn't convince the jury that this was somehow overreach or inconsistencies or lying or whatever. And then the fact that they say they think they're going to file an appeal. Very strange, particularly if you feel so strongly about the case that Kelly is being railroaded, that you would even think that maybe you would even put the idea out there that there might not be an appeal. They're considering it. They're thinking about it. Very odd. Terrible lawyers, as far as I'm concerned. And I've read and we've talked about, on this show, their attempt to cross-examine, and then the fact that they ran out of money. They couldn't bring in one of the witnesses, and they were in the wind with their witnesses, so they brought in new witnesses at the last minute. It's just like bad lawyering. But it's easy to sort of get to look past the damage of what Kelly did. And I just think I want to take a moment here because there's reporting. I want to read some reporting about what this meant for his victims and what this meant for women all over. Again, this is about Me Too movement as much as it's about anything else. But I want to talk about a little bit of the damage that was done. And Surviving R. Kelly is the seminal documentary, and I'm sure they're going to do another one. They have to a follow up on this thing. But it's just sort of the seminal documentary that ties this whole thing together. All the witnesses, the Janes, not all, but I guess most of the Janes that were witnesses on the stand that testified were in the R. Kelly documentary. I don't know all of them, so I can't say for sure who was and wasn't. But I want to play this clip just to remind people just how, like, when you victimize one person, you're victimizing the entire family. This thing has a ripple effect. It goes out and it ripples out to an entire family. And then when you affect the family, you affect a community. Then when you affect a community, you affect a region, an area. We're talking about redistricting, a district, then the state, then the country. This stuff ripples out beyond just the one person. And I want to highlight this particular story. This was from Surviving R. Kelly documentary that aired on Lifetime. People should check that out if you want to know more about Kelly and what he did and the victim stories that Mr. Kanek says is pissed him off so much that there were inconsistencies and lies and everything. I want to talk about this, and then I want to talk about the person who's the focus of this reacts to the judgment, because this is about, just to let you know, this is about the Chicago case against a young lady. This was years ago, who, and I remember this, who was on video, R. Kelly taped on video, having sex with the young lady, and him just committing horrible acts, and then talk about what it meant to see this man prosecuted. This is from the New York Times from the 28th, also by Troy Clausen. And it's entitled, How the Black Women Around R. Kelly's Case Feel About His Conviction. And it reads in part, when the singer Sparkle testified in a Chicago courtroom in 2008, she offered jurors a jarring account of sexual abuse. A man seen in a video urinating on and having sex with her teenage niece was R. Kelly, one of the biggest names in R&B music. After Kelly was acquitted in that trial, and then the Me Too movement a decade ago, Sparkle said she did not feel that it represented her experience. That changed on Monday when Mr. Kelly, on trial in New York, was convicted of all 9 counts against him. I didn't even know that the Me Too movement was for us black women, Sparkle, whose real name is Stephanie Edwards, said in an interview after the singer's conviction. Back then and still today, black women aren't really cared about. In the days and weeks that preceded the jury's verdict, many observers said they feared the stories from a group of black accusers, no matter how harrowing, might be dismissed. Instead, Mr. Kelly's conviction on Monday was viewed by many as a powerful validation of the accounts of both those who took the stand against him and those whose stories have never been made public. But whether Mr. Kelly's conviction represents a broader shift towards better treatment of black victims of sexual abuse is still unknown. The issue of whose stories are prioritized has been central in the recent activism efforts. When Tarana Burke, a black woman, started the original iteration of Me Too around 2007, she hoped to use the phrase to raise awareness of sexual assault and connect victims to resources. But observers noted that the effort had not been supported by prominent white feminists. They point to data that shows black women are disproportionately more likely than most to experience sexual abuse or violence, but less likely to report them in some situations. To some, these factors explain what, until Monday, was a decades-long failure to bring Mr. Kelly to justice. We needed a trial, a video, a marriage license, a docuseries, a social media campaign, organizers in town, all just to get to this moment within the criminal justice system, said Treva B. Lindsay, a professor at Ohio State University. If we need this level of sexual predation to get an acknowledgement that black women and girls are enduring a disproportionate amount of sexual violence compared to their broader population, I think that's actually a really sad sign. So finally, this last piece about what's next for Kelly's music as well as Kelly himself, I think it's a fascinating piece. And it's by John Seidel, and it says in part, quote, "The verdict from a federal jury in Brooklyn could be the first domino to fall as the singer-songwriter who rose from the South Side confronts the massive amount of legal jeopardy he still faces in Chicago's federal court, Cook County, and in Minnesota. Quote, obviously this is a huge setback for Mr. Kelly, and it changes the entire landscape for him," Renato Mariotti, a former federal prosecutor, says. At this point, he really has to be thinking about what I call global resolution. Quote, "I would not be surprised if, once the dust settles, Mr. Kelly's team starts talking to prosecutors in Chicago and elsewhere regarding a potential resolution whereby he would admit to all the conduct, and that would be considered by one judge in one location," Mariotti said. During the last status hearing in Chicago's federal case, Kelly's defense attorney, Steve Greenberg, said the Brooklyn verdict would be key to how the Chicago case moves forward. He told the judge, "If Mr. Kelly wins the case in New York, I'm certain he'll want to litigate the case in Chicago. But if convicted in New York," Greenberg said, "I don't know what Mr. Kelly's position would be." So, we need to do better. No truer words have been said. Okay, that's it for me for today and for this week. Thank you all for watching. Again, you can learn more about the show, contact the show, contact me at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the world as I like. vtip.com. You can take a look at this full video at v-tip.com/-7T as in Thomas. And support the show at our PayPal, which is, I don't know what it is. You'll see it. It'll be on the description in this where this video is, either at stream.vtip.net or on our YouTube channel, our YouTube page. So until next time, thank you again for watching, and I will I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.